On January 28, 1969, 6 miles off the coast of Santa Barbara, there was a blowout on one of Union Oil's platforms. The spill continued for 10 days and dumped somewhere between 80,000 and 100,000 barrels of crude oil into the Santa Barbara Channel. By comparison, the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill off the Gulf Coast was about 4.9 million barrels of oil. But the Santa Barbara spill was a massive and devastating event and remains the largest oil spill in the history of California. Thousands of birds died. Marine mammals like sea lions, elephant seals, and whales died or were injured. Fish populations declined. Just like with the BP oil spill, commercial fishing was suspended. There was property damage. Tourism suffered. This crisis was all over the news, on television, in newspapers, and covered extensively in Life magazine. When he was called to a congressional hearing on the spill, the president of Union Oil said, "I don't like to call it a tragedy because there has been no loss of human life. I'm amazed at the publicity for the loss of a few birds." There was a lot of outrage in the Santa Barbara community, in California, and really across the United States. People had witnessed numerous environmental problems across the country: pollution, dumping, air quality problems, water quality issues. It was obvious that these growing concerns needed to be addressed, and the federal government responded in part by establishing a national policy to address the environment in the form of the National Environmental Policy Act.
Pollution, fouling of the air we breathe and the water we use, is a subject of continuing concern to all of us. It is a subject we cannot avoid. For all of us, by the fact that we live and breathe, are sufferers from and contributors to pollution. Wherever a summer rain washes loose soil into a stream, wherever fuel is burned to generate power, wherever new construction disturbs the lay of the land, the inevitable, unavoidable result is pollution.
NEPA was passed during the Nixon administration. Remember, Nixon, who had just been sworn in as president weeks before the Santa Barbara spill, visited the site. Despite his many transgressions, the Nixon administration did react relatively quickly and positively to environmental problems. So, in the midst of all the industrial pollution, pesticide protests, and Life magazine pictures of dead marine life on abandoned beaches, Washington began mobilizing to create a national policy addressing the environment. And the Interior and Insular Affairs Committee was striving to create such a policy and a law to enforce it. Washington Senator and chair of the Committee for Interior and Insular Affairs, Henry Scoop Jackson, said of the state of environmental affairs in the country, "It is the unanimous view of the members of the Interior and Insular Affairs Committee that our nation's present state of knowledge, our established public policies, and our existing governmental institutions are not adequate to deal with the growing environmental problems and crises the nation faces. The nation has in many areas overdrawn its bank account in life-sustaining natural elements." There were a number of legislative proposals that were being considered in Washington at the time. Different people and groups had their own idea of what they wanted to protect, what the environment was, and how it was that we were going to protect it. Most ideas had two aspects. The first, the declaration of a national policy of environmental protection, and the second, the creation of an agency that would oversee the implementation of that policy. In the end, Scoop Jackson's proposal prevailed. It had something no one else's did, what he called action-forcing devices, to ensure that the new environmental policy was actually implemented. He wanted the bill to create a general requirement that would be applicable to all agencies that have responsibilities that affect the environment, rather than going agency by agency. Jackson argued that legislators can create principles, but administrators could ignore them. Scoop's NEPA was specifically designed to avoid this. He and his committee went forward with a proposed act that would, by congressional action, create a national policy that would guide federal activities that somehow related to or may have an impact on the quality of the environment, and would also include those action-forcing devices to ensure that the policy was implemented. These action-forcing devices would have to be incorporated into the ongoing activities of the federal government. Jackson called the law the most important and far-reaching environmental and conservation measure ever enacted. And he elaborated on the Senate floor about the importance of this new environmental policy, saying a statement of environmental policy is more than a statement of what we believe as a people and as a nation. It establishes priorities and gives expression to our national goals and aspirations. It provides a statutory foundation to which administrators may refer for guidance in making decisions which find environmental values in conflict with other values. What is involved is a congressional declaration that we do not intend, as a government or as a people, to initiate actions which endanger the continued existence or the health of mankind. That we will not intentionally initiate actions which will do irreparable damage to the air, land, and water which support life on Earth. The basic principle of the policy is that we must strive in all that we do to achieve a standard of excellence in man's relationship to his physical surroundings. If there are to be departures from this standard of excellence, they should be exceptions to the rule and the policy. And as exceptions, they will have to be justified in light of the public scrutiny required by Section 102. From Santa Barbara to Nixon to Scoop Jackson, the end result is the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. Enacted in 1969 and signed into law by President Nixon on January 1, 1970, as his first official act of office of the new decade, NEPA was one of the first recognitions by the federal government that we have some real environmental concerns to address, that the idea that nature's bounty would last forever was false. NEPA was intended to consider the natural environment as a whole and assess its quality continuously. Since NEPA was enacted in 1969, nearly every state has enacted some kind of mini-NEPA, and about 85 countries around the world have created their own environmental statutes modeled after ours. There are even some lending agencies that require NEPA-type assessments as a precondition of extending credit for infrastructure or energy projects. NEPA was and continues to be one of the most important environmental laws in history.